This conference will now be
I
recorded.
lost you. I can't hear you.
Okay, do you hear me now? No?
I can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I cannot hear you.
And when I talk,
Mm-mm.
my thing goes green. Only Kathy's on.
This conference will now be recorded.
And now do you hear me? Okay.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
All right. Good. Okay, so we are continuing with Shaar Habechina, the gateway of examination, of reflection, of recognizing God. And we're towards the end of Perek Shalishi. And he gives over here a classic parable. Okay. Uma nidmu bazeh. And with this, we can compare it lishnei achim. We have it over there, guys? In the book, it is on page 178, the third paragraph. Uma nidmu bazeh lishnei achim. So we're talking about how the opportunities in life, how the world is a combination of the physical and the spiritual, and we are supposed to be very, very judicious in the way we choose to prioritize, to emphasize, to divide our time and energy. Umanidmu bazeh, and we are compared lishnei achim to two brothers. Yorshu me'avim adama, and they inherited from their late father each a field. Shetzricha la'avda, that was, as we said in Lion King, talk about your old fixer-upper. Okay, it needed a good amount of work. V'chilku ota lishnayim, they divided this large field into two parts, and v'lo yalahem davar zulata, and that's all they inherited. This one large field, which is now split in half, each of them has half the field. One of these two brothers was Da'atan, was a wise person. Vizariz, and a person who was energetic and would get jobs done. Vasheni, whereas the other brother, he delicately says, Hafcho, was the opposite. Without going into details, but the opposite. Hadatan Ra'ah, the wise brother, saw Ki asko b'admaso bilvad yimanato mi asuk parnaso umi hagia el trafo. He was going to put all of his time into this field. It's just not going to produce at this point. That's going to force him to not be involved in earning his livelihood and from feeding himself, supporting himself. Therefore, v'histakel avod adamas adachirim, he hired himself out to work by other people's fields, mischar amalo yom yom, in order that he would have his day wages in order to support himself. But when he finished working at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, what would he do? He would put an hour or so into his own field, working hard, working industriously. And when he worked enough days for this other person that he had enough for a day's wages, he didn't need to go to work that day. He wouldn't go into work that day for others. And he put a whole day of work into his own field. Below Sar Lasot came, and he did not deviate from this path ad shenigmara avodat admato kahogen, until he had completed fixing up, refurbishing, fixing the field properly. V'higi'o ubehigia et perotea uzman tzuata, and when it then was producing its fruits, it's time to harvest it. Kabtzam ba'asam, he gathered hitparnes mehem v'shana shenit. By the second year, it was his own field that was doing its production. Vaya oved amaso kirtzono, and he would work his own field as he willed. V'holech mosif ba'ilonot, and then he would add on more trees. Ad shehayta tuasam maspeket leparnaso, until his tvua was enough, his produce was enough, his fields was producing enough for his own livelihood. Votirolo mashosif bo adma admato, and then he was able to buy more land and produce and produce and produce. That was brother number one. Va'ach hakasil, the foolish brother. Kevan sheyada, once he knew, he realized, sha'avodato ba'admato timna'eo mi'tasek be'inim zonatav. He knew that if he's going to work on his own field, the half field that he inherited, that he received, he would not be able to go to work. He would not earn food. He would not have enough to eat. Asva lagamre. What did he do? He completely neglected that field. And he worked for others on their fields. Get paid his wages, support himself from that. Who would not leave over anything at all. And when he had enough for another day's food without having to work, he'd have a day of rest, a day of leisure, a day of having fun, without giving any thought to his own field. Vayitot, and the times and the time that he had off, he go to the bathhouse. And his field remained completely desolate. Lo itzmicha davar, not a thing grew. V'ta'al kula kamshonim, and thorns and weeds were overtaking it. V'neheras gidra, and the fence around it was in disrepair. V'nasah shitafon, and then when there would be lots of rains, it washed away et ilaneha, the small trees that had been there got washed away. This is all what Shlomo Melech, the wise one, says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, Al sadeh ish atzel avarti, by the field of a lazy person I passed. V'al kerem, and by the vineyard of an adam chaser leiv, of a person who would not take things to heart. V'hinei, and behold, Allah kulo kamshonim, filled with thorns. Kasu panav charulim, its face is covered with all these weeds. The geder avanav, and the stone fence nehersa. V'hamaskil, and a wise person, kasher yain, us hopefully, when we look from mashal hazeh at this parable, yitbonein mimenu inyanei acharito. From here we can recognize our ultimate end. Asher hi beito be'emet. What is our true house? What is the true place that we are going to? And yes, we need to, and that is our inheritance. That is our field. That is what is ours. And yes, here in this world, I just want to turn the lights back on, pardon me a second. And yes, here in this world, we've got to work. We've got to do what we need to do to stay alive, to earn our keep. But we have to realize that our true field is that which we can deal with in the spiritual realm, that which we can amass in the spiritual realm. And therefore, when we have free time and we have free days, then, right, granted, we do need some time off also. We need to balance it. But to put our focus, when we do have the time and the energy and the bandwidth, to put it towards our nitzchiyut, our true eternity. And to do for that all that we can. Kishehu oseh la'olamo, right? That which he does for his own world. And that which we do for others, right? That which we do for this world, we do as if we're doing for others as much as we need. Right? All right, as much as we need to do. So Rav Shlomo Shwadron of blessed memory, who's known as the Maggid of Yerushalayim. So the Maggid speaks the whole series of Maggid books, or Pesach Kron. It all started with his drushes. And when I lived in Israel and taught the yeshiva in Israel, he used to come to my yeshiva and speak. We used to go hear him speak. He was amazing. So he'd always have us laughing. And he'd say, the reason I make you laugh is when your mouths are open, that's where I could stuff some things in and get some concepts into you. So he would tell that he visited the States. He lived in Yerushalayim, in Shari Chesed. He visited the States, and he came to a minyan in the morning, right? At 6:30, it's the minyan, and it's before you know it, the minyan started, the minyan finished, right? And he goes, whoa. So he asked everybody, what's going on? What's the rush? They said to me, business. Right? You have to go to business. Okay. Right? So that's how it is each day of the week. Comes Sunday. He gets there at 6:30. No one's there. 7 o'clock, no one's there. 7:30, no one's there. 8 o'clock, no one's there. 8:30, they start to trickle in. And then they start davening, and boop, 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 all finished. So he said to them, I don't understand. Right? What happened at 6:30? They said, Sunday. He calls Sunday Shabbat Sheni de Golius. Right? We have a Yom Tov Sheni, a second day Yom Tov of those who live in exile. So Sunday is Shabbos Sheni, the second day of Shabbos for those who live in exile. Right? But he said, I don't understand. If there's no business, so why is everyone davening so fast? So they explained he was in New York. The guy goes, what's he carrying? The New York Times, the Sunday Times. He has to read that cover to cover. That's why they're going. That's why they're going so fast. That was Roshon Shvadron's idea, right? So when there's business, I understand you've got to run. If you don't have business, so utilize that time, right? What you have to do for business, you do. What you don't, utilize that time for that which is truly your field. There's a beautiful Gemara in the end of Moed Katan, not the end, actually, about the 9th page of Moed Katan, where the son of Rishon ben Yochai came to get a bracha from some of these great sages. And they gave him what seemed to be a very strange bracha. It seemed to be more of a klala, more of a curse. Right? They said your table should be overturned. You should send out and not bring in and not send out. And then he said your house should be desolate, and your lodging place should be populated, right? And he came back to his father, and his father said, "What bracha did they give you?" They said, "Not only did they not give me a bracha, they gave me a klala. They cursed me." And he asked him, "Well, what did they say to you?" And the son told him, And he explained all of those were actually a bracha, right? In other words, when he said your table should be overturned, right? Look at Kiddush under the table of those who have lots of little kids eating there, right? That's what it means. Your table should be overturned. You should send out and not bring back. You should marry off your daughters. They don't move back into your house. You should take in and not send out. Take in daughters-in-law and not have to send them away, right? And then he said that your house should be desolate. What is our true house? He said that is Beit Olamim. That is our kever. That is the ultimate burial place where every person ends up. That should be desolate. And your lodging place, your temporary lodging place, should be filled. Meaning we should have a long life. But the way to have a long, productive life is to recognize that this is a temporary lodging place, and that is the ultimate home, the ultimate inheritance, that which we have, and therefore, be sure to put time and energy into that. Right? We have to stay alive over here. We have to eat all those things. We need to earn a livelihood, but beyond that, as much as we can to dedicate time and effort towards that eternity. Vaksil, whereas the foolish person, ose bishnei hadvarim behefech, right? That person acts in the opposite way in both matters, meaning mishtadel be'inyanei olamo, puts all the effort into what needs to be done for this world, umit aleim, and completely forgets, ignores, hides himself away me'inyanei acharito, from that which is a person's ultimate end. Like the Chacham Shlomo Melech, again, King Solomon said about this foolish person, Ve'echazeh anochi ashit libi ra'iti lakachti musar. Talking about that field that was all overgrown, right? Ve'echazeh anochi, I saw, ashis libi, I took it to heart, ra'iti, I saw, lakachti musar. And I took that as musar, as a guide for myself. And that itself is very, very powerful, right? There's so much that we can that might be there in front of us that we might see, but so often we're not ashis libi. We don't take it to heart, right? We don't take the musar. We just keep on going, right? But the events that go on around us are meant to be these guideposts and these wake-up calls for us as we make our way through. Okay, that's the end of Perek Gimel, which spoke about the physical and the spiritual aspects of this world, of our lives, and where the emphasis needs to be. Let's begin Perek Dalet, okay, chapter 4. Ach kama simane chachma babruim. There are many categories, types of chachma, of wisdom, babruim, amongst the creations, amongst this world that God has created, asher nuchal livchon bahem, that we are able to draw from, that we're able to be, like Shlomo says, echazeh, ashis libi, ra'isi, lakachti musar, I saw, I took it to heart, I contemplated, I took the musar. There are many different aspects, and he's going to go through 7 different categories, we'll call it, aspects of this world that we are meant to draw from. Nemar ki pinota chachma mukuyem babruim l'rov mineim v'ishehen sheva. I'd say that we can categorize these aspects of wisdom that we find amongst this creation with all of their different types and aspects. Nevertheless, they will fall into 7 categories. And let's begin those categories. Achat mehena. Number one of these. Simana chachma hanira b'sharashei ha'olam v'yisodotav. That which we can see in the roots of this world, in the foundation, in the physical, the earth science, the astronomy, wisdom of this world. Birotenu amidat haaretz be'emtza. Right? When we just look at our planet, where we've got the land in the middle, v'hamayim smuchim la lamala mimena, and upon that we've got the water, v'ha'avir samuch lahem, and upon that we have the air, space, v'ha'esh lamala mikulam. And I'm not sure what he means, right? Fire is above all of them. Now, if we'll look at the sages say that there are 3 states of matter and Aish, right? There is the earth, there is the water, there's the avir, the air, and there is Aish, right? Science says there are 3 states of matter and there is energy, okay? So I'm not sure what he means by the Aish. Is he referring to energy, or what is this Aish? Right? The Torah actually refers to Shamayim as Aish and Mayim, fire and water, right? What that means, I don't know. I don't know what that means. Certainly there is incredible energy that exists up in the world, right? But I'm not sure what he means. Al mishkal v'shiur lo yishtaneh mimenu davar. And each thing is measured in a manner that it is static, right? That it maintains these ratios, right? And certainly, right, science has come a long way since when Rav Bachya wrote this, and now we understand the gravitational pull, just how strong that is, and were to deviate by one in with a billion zeros, right? Either this world would collapse or this world would just, right? And the electromagnetic field and all these different things, right? That it is just so precisely calibrated. Kol echa mehen shokel al mekomo hamityached bo val mugval lo. And everything stays within the boundaries that were given for it. V'hayam omeid. The oceans are where they are. V'hamayim asurim b'tocho. And the waters are constrained, are, so to speak, imprisoned in that area. Lo yavru et gvulo. They don't cross those boundaries. Im yahamu galav. And if the waves will get haughty, v'yistaru ruchotav, and its winds become stormy, nevertheless, it always returns back to its place. Kamo shekatuv, as it's written by Eov, ve'eshbar alav chukai. I break upon it, I force upon it my laws, God says, va'asim b'riach udlatayim. And it's as if there are these doors with a latch on them, with a lock on them. Va'omer, saying, ad po tavo, v'lo tosif. Until here you shall go, and not beyond. Upo yashit, v'gaon galecha. And until here you can go with your haughty waves, but then they humbly, right? It's fascinating, you sit by the ocean, the waves come crashing in, and then they humbly get sucked right back into that ocean. V'amar ba'amidat hashamayim va'aretz. And it stated, this is King David now, about the establishment of the heavens and the earth. Lo lam Hashem devarcha nitzav bashamayim, that your word, God, is always standing in the heaven. L'dor vador emunatecha, generation to generation is your faithfulness. Konanta eretz v'ta'amod, you establish the land and it stands. L'mishpatecha amdu hayom, and based on your judgments, they stand today. Ki hakol avadecha, because they are all your servants. Ukamosha Zachar David, like King David mentioned elsewhere, Me'a'inin Azeh b'mizmor barchi nafshi et Hashem. That's Tehillim, I believe, 105, and that's what we say on Rosh Chodesh, and we speak about this incredible world. But an emphasis here between the lines is a concept that we allude to in our davening when we say mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit, that God renews continuously the act of creation. Meaning, if I were to hire someone, right, to make this table for us, right, and he makes the table, and then he's just standing there like this, and we say, "Thank you very much." He's, "Oh, you're very welcome." Thank you very much. Oh, you're very welcome. Right? Are you going to go now? No, of course not. I have to hold up the table. Right? So obviously that's not a very good carpenter, and we want our money back. So when we're creating yesh me yesh, something from something, it has its own inherent permanence. But God, who created this world yesh me ayin, something from nothing, then the only way it continues to exist is with this constant infusion of energy, of godliness into this world. Otherwise, right, as we said, actually we discussed this, I believe, Shavuot time, that by Bereshit, by creation, it says Yom Echad, day one, Yom Sheni, second day, third day, fourth day, Yom Revi'i, Yom Chamishi, Yom HaShishi. And then it says day the sixth, right? Seemingly referring to a very specific sixth day. Which day is that? And Rashi brings the Medrash that there was a condition that God made with creation, that if Israel will accept the Torah, then this world will be. Otherwise, it goes back to tohu vavohu. It goes back to being null and void. As we've explained, the purpose of creation is that God wants to share his goodness. You need to have a people who are willing to accept. You need to have a manual of how to connect to God to share his goodness. And we need to have people who are willing to accept this. And that's where Torah comes in, and that's where Israel comes in. And without that, there is no constant infusion of energy. I believe the Chofetz Chaim said that the reason why the world was made with these different time zones is that way you have someone always learning Torah. We might be asleep over here, but they're awake over there. Right? You always have someone learning Torah. Rav Chaim Volozhin, Moshe Chaim says that with the absence of that for a moment, then the world would cease to exist. We no longer have this infusion, and that's why his Volozhin yeshiva, which was the prototype of all the yeshivas that we have nowadays, it started with the Volozhin yeshiva. There they had 24-hour shifts going. They had boys learning, right, divided up to learn at different times. And so that is this idea that this world, that God is constantly keeping this world going. And as we've mentioned, that actually is a little bit frightening when we think about it, because that means that as I am doing things that I should not be doing, God is right that moment actively infusing me with life, giving me the energy to do that which actually is harmful to myself, to others, to the world. But God has this Erech apayim. God has this patience, not infinite patience. Our time does come, but has this patience with us that we will come around. So the first of these categories is that which we glean from this incredible universe that we're just learning more and more and more about. You have these black holes, you have all these, it's just fascinating. I mean, to me, what's the most fascinating is that there is this ever expanding universe. What does that mean? Meaning, what's beyond it? What is beyond it? Yeah, it's just, it's, I'm sorry? Can't even fathom. Yeah. And it's got to be humbling and to help us, to help rid ourselves of this malady that, oh, I can understand. And if it doesn't make sense to me, then it doesn't make sense. When just we recognize that we know so little of what's really going on the macro level, on a micro level, down to the atoms, down to cells in our body. It was still figuring out components of the cell. I mean, it's fascinating. Vapina hashenit. This second, how does they define the word pina?
Foundation, cornerstone.
Cornerstone. Foundation, cornerstone. Okay. Okay. Siman hachachma hanireh b'min ha'adam. The wisdom that can be found in the human species. Asher hu ha'olam hakatan. That we are described as a olam katan, a small world, a microcosm of the world. Asher bo hashlamat sidrei ha'olam, that within humankind is the completion of all these different orders, aspects of the world. V'yafyo, its beauty, ziyuno, its glow, utamimuto, and its completeness, right? And this is not talking about the physical human being. This is that this human being, this pinnacle of creation, has aspects of the entire world contained in us. The Elav Ramaz David, and again, King David alluded to that, alav shalom ba'amro, when he said, Hashem Adonenu, ma adir shimcha v'chol haaretz. How wondrous is your name throughout all the land. Now, over there first, in that Mizmor, he's talking about the wonders of creation, right? About the heavens, the work of your hands, the sun, the moon. And then he starts to talk about humankind. Is what is man that you should mention him, that you should count him, right? Right, talking about mankind. And then again he says, Hashem Adonenu, Hashem our God, Ma'adir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz. How overwhelming, how awesome is your name that we find B'chol Haaretz. So there is this aspect of humankind being this olam katan, this microcosm of the world, and that extends in many ways, right? We say if a person saves a life, it's if a person saves the entire world, right? And on Hashkafic view, we view each person as being the center, and everyone and everything around that person are the props, are all these events and encounters that are there for us to best self-actualize. But as everyone around me is a prop, I'm a prop for all those around me also. So you have all of these incredible intersecting circles that are constantly coming into contact with one another. V'hashlishit, The third foundation, Siman HaChachma HaNir'ah B'Harkavat HaAdam V'Chibor Gufo V'Kochot Nafsho. How we have this composite when it comes to humankind of Chibur Gufo, the connection between the physical body, V'Kochot Nafsho, and our spiritual abilities, V'Or HaSeichel, and the light of Seichel, Sheyichid Oto Bo Abare, that God made us, granted uniquely to us. V'Sam Lo Ba Yitron al Shaar Chayim, and gave us this whole different realm above all the other living things. She'ena medabrim, the non-speakers, non-human kind. V'udome la'olam hagadol, v'nimshal elav, v'sharashav, v'yisodotav. Right? And we are like this entire world. They love Rama's Eov, Ba'omra, and this is what Eov, Job, alluded to when he said, Halo kichelev taticheni. Well, Eov didn't say this, right? This is when Hashem, he was saying, Halo kichalav, right? Like taticheni, the chagvina takvieni, right? I congealed like fats, like cheese, or basar talvisheni. God, you clothed me with flesh, with meat, with skin. You establish me with my bones and my muscles and my tendons. Chaim v'chesed asiti imadi, right? Tremendous chaim, life and chesed you did with me. Uvkudatcha shamra ruchi, and I keep that ruach, that spirit, through pekudatcha, through your command. And this is very fascinating. Right, Gabrielle, you asked me a question a long time ago, right, about Asher Yatzar, right, the blessing we make after successfully eliminating waste from our body, which if we can't do that, we are medical emergencies, okay, and not to take it for granted. And you asked about why we say nikavim, nikavim, right, you've made us with nikavim holes, chalulim tubes, chalulim tubes. So it's already plural. So you asked me, why does it say it twice? And I answered you with one answer, and then I came across Rabbi Schwab's other answer, right? The answer that I gave you is, after having studied biology with my daughter when she was taking biology, so we have the big tubes, we have the aorta, we have the big veins and arteries, we have the esophagus and the intestines. Those are the big tubes. But actually, every cell has all of these semi-permeable membrane, right? And allows certain things in and out, right? And there are all these ion channels which will keep the positive and the negative. And if those open up, the cell dies and we die. So there's nikavim and there's nikavim. There's the micro and the macro. But Rabbi Schwab says a beautiful thing on the Asher Yatzar. And that I think is what he's referring to over here, right? I mean, the human body is no more impressive, actually pretty far less impressive than the bodies of many of the animals. I mean, we can't run like a cheetah, right? We can't swim. We can swim, but we can't swim like some animals can swim, right? We can't fly, right? So when we're talking about, right, you created mankind with this wisdom, right? If we're talking about simply the human, the miracle of the human body, we shouldn't talk about the human body particularly. Animals also eliminate wastes, and if they don't, they also die. So what is the emphasis on the Adam? Remember, I went with a family up the northern coast, up the coast to the north, and we saw the elephant seals. Have you ever seen the elephant seals? They're humongous. I remember the ranger saying that they can move 25 miles an hour on the sand. I mean, was that Hussein Bolt? Who's the fastest human? He can't run 25 miles an hour. And these big, blubbery, I mean, it's just, so what is so wondrous about Asher Yatzar Adam, that you created humankind, Bechachma? That's how we are this composite of the physical and the spiritual. And we're not just talking about a living spirit. That animals also, as long as they are alive, they're having a living spirit, the nefesh chaya. We're talking about a completely separate aspect of ourselves, which is that we have this duality. We are a physical being with a nefesh chaya, with a living spirit, and then we are a spiritual being that partners together. And how you keep those two together. And there is, as he explains, the nekavim, chalulim, chalulim, that the same way that there is this physical self, there is also the mirror image in a spiritual self, which has its nekavim, chalulim, chalulim, right? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how this comes together. And that is the yitron that we have over all the other balei chayim, the chibur gufo, the kochot nafsho. The chibur, the coming together of our guf, and the kochot, and the powers of our nefesh, that those two come together. Yes, Gabriel?
I was just wondering if could that be related to the idea that each of the mitzvot are related to a different part of your guf?
Yeah. Yeah, we just had the halacha this morning after davening that the Shema has 245 words to it. So in davening by ourselves, we start Kel Melech Ne'eman to get 3 more. Davening with a minyan, we hear the Chazan say Hashem Elokechem Emet, right? Giving us that. What does that do for us? That gets us from 245 to 248. What's 248? The sages say, however, they're breaking it down, there are 248 parts to the body. And the 248 positive mitzvot, and each one gives life to that, right? That physical and its counterpart that it has, and each word of Shema, imbues it with that life. So those are 3 of the first of the 7 of these aspects that we look at when we see this categories that we can see the incredible wisdom. And again, like Shlomo said, it's not enough to see it, but we have to ashis libi, take it to heart, and lakachti musar. We have to be impacted by it and become better, more focused, prioritize better as a result of this. Okay, my friends, good. We will call it over here. Yasher koach, everybody.
Thank you. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.